Dionysus arrives in Greek myth the way he arrives in a city, not politely, not gradually, but like something that breaks the locks on the world you thought was stable. People call him the god of wine. That's true, but it's incomplete. Wine is only his most visible tool. What Dionysus truly governs is the moment a society loses control of itself: ecstasy, frenzy, revelation, theater, the collapse of boundaries between human and divine, order and disorder. And the Greeks knew he was old. His name appears on linear tablets, meaning he was worshipped already in the Mycenaean world, long before classical Athens turned him into an icon of tragedy and festival. So the question isn't who is Dionysus. The question is, why does he always feel like a stranger anyway? 1. Born twice, belonging no way. In the most widespread tradition, Dionysus is the son of Zeus and Semele, a mortal princess of Thebes. The story is effuse. Semele is destroyed by divine lightning, and Zeus saves the unborn child by sewing him into his own thigh until he is ready to be born. It's why Dionysus is often called twice-born, a god who enters the world through disaster and improvisation, not through stable lineage. This matters because Dionysus doesn't behave like the clean Olympians. He doesn't just sit above the world and command it. He moves through it, contaminates it, transforms it. And some traditions push the twice-born idea even further. Orphic and later sources speak of a first Dionysus, born from Zeus and Persephone, sometimes identified as Zagreus or Eubuleus, torn apart in a primordial violence and then reborn again in the familiar Semele story. The details vary by source and later reconstruction, but the point is consistent. Dionysus is a god whose identity includes fragmentation, death, and return. Dionysus is not a simple god of pleasure. He is a god of survival after rupture. 2. The god who tests captors. There is a short, vivid myth that tells you almost everything you need to know about him. In the Homeric Hymn to Dionysus, Dionysus appears by the sea as a young man, beautiful, strange, unthreatening. Pirate sees him, assuming he is a rich captive. They bind him and sail away, but the bindings refuse to hold. Vines begin to grow through the ship. Wine floods the deck. A lion appears. Panic spreads. The captors leap into the sea and become dolphins. It's not just a miracle story. It's a statement of power. Dionysus punishes the mindset that treats living beings as property. And he does it not by brute force, but by turning the world unreal, by making the rules stop working. That is chaos in the Dionysian sense, not randomness, but the sudden revelation that the order you trust is thinner than you thought. 3. Thebes, when a city refuses the god. If the pirate story is a warning to individuals, the next great Dionysian story is a warning to a state. Euripides Bacchae begins with Dionysus arriving in Thebes, the city of his mother. He comes not as a distant deity but as a presence on the street, insisting that Thebes recognize him. In the play's opening, he declares who he is: son of Zeus, born from Semele, returning to demand honor. The problem is Pentheus, the king. Pentheus represents the voice of order that believes it can legislate the world into obedience. He bans Dionysian worship. He mocks the ecstatic rites. He tries to arrest the god. And Dionysus does what he always does. He doesn't meet control with a bigger control. He meets it with disorientation. Pentheus becomes obsessed. He wants to see the forbidden rites. Dionysus persuades him to dress as a woman to spy on the Maenads, Dionysus' ecstatic followers, on Mount Cithaeron. The king who claims to fear chaos becomes the one drawn helplessly toward it. The end is brutal, and Euripides does not soften it. Pentheus is destroyed by the very frenzy he tried to suppress, and the horror is intensified by recognition. His own mother participates, not knowing what she is doing until it's too late. This is not a party god story. It is a story about what happens when a city refuses to acknowledge forces it cannot control: desire, grief, collective emotion, the irrational, the sacred. Dionysus doesn't create these forces. He reveals them. 4. Why wine is never just wine. So why wine? because wine is the perfect Dionysian medium. It is ordinary, a drink, a crop, a craft, and yet it can become extraordinary. It alters perception, loosens boundaries, makes people speak truths they didn't know they had. That's why Dionysus is tied not only to intoxication, but to ecstasy, standing outside oneself. That's why he is tied to revel bands, thersoi, and maenads in Greek religious imagination, the eruption of something wild into the civic world. And this is where Dionysus becomes the god of theater in the deepest sense, not the god of entertainment, but the god of ritualized transformation. Theater is the city giving itself permission, for a set time, to become someone else, to mask, to weep, to howl, to watch kings fall and feel cleansed by it. Dionysus is not the opposite of order. He is the force that shows order what it is made of. 5. The controlled chaos. Here is Dionysus' real paradox. He is chaos, but he is also structure. His festivals are not merely riots. They are scheduled. They have rules. They happen in designated places. The city contains Dionysus in ritual form because the alternative is worse, uncontained Dionysus. That's what the myths keep circling. The pirates try to contain him with ropes. He turns the ship into a living jungle. Pentheus tries to contain him with law. Dionysus turns the king into a spectator of his own undoing. In both cases, the same principle holds. Dionysus cannot be handled like other things. He is not an object. He is a threshold st. 6. What Dionysus really asks. So what does Dionysus want? In myth, he wants recognition, honor for his mother, a place among the gods, a place in the city. But symbolically, he wants something more unsettling. He wants the city to admit that human beings are not purely rational, that we are not governed only by policy and self-control, that there are moments, grief, desire, fear, joy, when we become many things at once. And if the city refuses to acknowledge that, Dionysus arrives anyway, not as a conqueror, as a mirror. Wine and chaos, then, are not separate domains. They are two names for the same mechanism, the loosening of the self, the dissolving of borders, the revelation that the world is stranger than your laws can count. That is Dionysus, not merely the god of drunkenness, the god of transformation. And the final warning in his myths is always the same. You can deny him, you can mock him, you can outlaw him, but you cannot make the human soul stop having a wild side, because Dionysus is not only out there, he is also inside the city, and inside you.